In recent months, something far more serious than the public ever imagined has begun to unfold around Pastor Joel Osteen's name, and the revelations now emerging make it clear that his once impeccable image is no longer as untouchable as it seemed. Over the years, Osteen has become one of the most influential figures in modern Christianity, but also one of the most controversial, collecting criticism for his prosperity-focused preaching style, questions regarding the management of his megachurch, and controversies that have regained strength after incidents that sparked suspicion, heated debates, and even unexpected accusations. And that is precisely why what is happening now, both behind the scenes and in front of the public, is more serious than many realize. There are reports reigniting old controversies, internal discussions that never fully came to light, and tensions that cast doubt not only on his reputation, but also on the real impact of his spiritual leadership. Today we are going to explore details that until now were pushed aside, arguments that divide followers and critics, as well as recent events that may redefine everything people believed about him. Before we continue, if you're here for the first time, or if you regularly follow the channel, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe. This is extremely important because YouTube only understands that this content deserves to be recommended when it sees your interaction, and it's thanks to that support that we can keep bringing complete and investigative videos like this one. If you want to support the channel even further, you can contribute with a super thanks, which directly helps sustain our work. But if you can't, just comment on which part of this story surprised you the most. Your comment already makes a huge difference. And stay until the end, because the final revelation in this video will certainly leave you impacted in a way you're not expecting. Joel Scott Osteen was born on March 5, 1963, in Houston, Texas, and grew up in a family environment filled with faith, discipline, and a constant sense of purpose. He was one of 6 children of John and Dodie Osteen, a couple who dedicated their lives to ministry and to expanding Lakewood Church, which at the time was nothing more than a simple congregation set up in an old warehouse. From a very young age, Joel watched his father preach with intensity, visit church members, counsel families, and build a community based on emotional and spiritual support. Joel's childhood was marked by a routine that blended ordinary life with the intense dynamics of a pastoral family, where everything happened in close proximity. Meetings, rehearsals, service preparations, and even conversations about the church's challenges were a natural part of everyday life. Even though he was surrounded by this spiritual atmosphere, he didn't show immediate interest in following in his father's footsteps. On the contrary, he was more reserved, shy, and often found handling equipment, cameras, and cables, already showing an inclination toward backstage work and production. The influence of John Osteen, however, was undeniable. His warm style, his dedication to the community, and the way he balanced firmness with kindness left deep marks on Joel, who would later carry those traits with him. His mother, Dodie, also played a crucial role, instilling values of perseverance, faith, and compassion, especially after facing and overcoming a serious medical diagnosis when Joel was still young. All of this formed the emotional and spiritual foundation that shaped his calm personality, his motivational style, and his ability to speak to millions as if he were talking to a friend. Although he never imagined he would one day lead the largest church in the United States, it was precisely in this environment, full of challenges, simplicity, and close family bonds, that his positive outlook on the world began to take shape. His journey toward the pulpit is one of the most curious and unexpected parts of his story, because contrary to what many imagine, he never dreamed of becoming a pastor, nor had the desire to take his father's place as the leader of the church. From a young age, Joel was passionate about the behind-the-scenes work, lighting, cameras, editing, broadcast planning. Everything related to the technical side of the services fascinated him far more than the idea of speaking in front of thousands of people. He studied production and communication, and when he returned to help his family, he naturally took over Lakewood Church's media department, transforming a local ministry into a modern, well-produced television program with a professional look for its time. For nearly 2 decades, he worked quietly, always behind the scenes, ensuring that his father's messages reached increasingly larger audiences. But his life took an unexpected turn when John Osteen repeatedly insisted that his son preach at least once. After much resistance, Joel finally agreed, prepared a simple, motivational, and light-hearted sermon, and delivered it before the congregation. Just 6 days later, his father passed away suddenly, leaving a huge void and a mission no one imagined Joel would take on. Although uncertain, and aware that he lacked traditional theological training, he felt he needed to continue the work his father had begun, and to everyone's surprise, the church welcomed him with enthusiasm. From that moment on, his life changed completely. That reserved young man who loved cameras became the face of one of the largest religious communities in the world, and his gentle, encouraging style transformed Lakewood into a global phenomenon. What began as a hesitant step became the start of an unlikely journey marked by growth, challenges, and an ascent he himself could never have planned. Although Osteen is accompanied by great influence and admiration, he has never been free from criticism, questioning, and delicate moments that required resilience and skill to preserve his public image. Over the decades, he became one of the most well-known pastors in the world, and that level of visibility naturally brought with it a series of controversies that gained national and international attention. Many of these situations involve debates about finances, public statements, church administration, and decisions made during moments of crisis. All these issues combined form a significant part of his story, a complex, sometimes uncomfortable part, but essential to understanding the multifaceted figure he has become. However, one of the most recurring criticisms is related to the so-called prosperity gospel, a label frequently attributed to Osteen by his detractors. His sermons focus on encouragement, positive faith, and overcoming adversity, but for many critics, the line between spirituality and financial motivation seems thin. His books such as Your Best Life Now and Become a Better You became bestsellers and generated millions in revenue. Press estimates suggest that just his first major book sold millions of copies and may have earned the pastor over $10 million over the years. This contributed to the debate over his wealth, which entertainment and business sources often estimate between $40 million and $60 million, values not officially confirmed by him, but frequently repeated in popular media. For his critics, this prosperity contrasts with the figure of a religious leader. For his supporters, is a natural consequence of his publishing work and motivational content industry. Another episode that drew national attention and debate was the controversy involving Hurricane Harvey in 2017. When Houston faced historic devastation, many voices on social media questioned why Lakewood Church, located in a former arena with capacity for more than 16,000 people, had not been immediately opened as a shelter. The situation quickly escalated into a major controversy, with intense online criticism and headlines suggesting a lack of response. Osteen and church representatives stated that the building had internal flooding and safety issues that prevented immediate opening, explaining that staff could only receive people once the location was safe and operational. Within a few days, the church opened its doors and began hosting displaced families. However, this delay caused significant backlash, and Osteen found himself needing to give interviews to clarify what had happened. There was no involvement of direct financial values in this episode, but the public impact deeply affected the perception of his community response. An earlier controversy that also marked his public image involved Victoria Osteen, Joel's wife, in a legal case in 2005. A flight attendant sued Victoria alleging misconduct during a flight, in an incident that gained national attention. The lawsuit sought compensation, and although the final financial details were not publicly disclosed, reports from the time indicated that the civil action sought significant monetary damages. The case went to trial and ended with Victoria's acquittal, as she denied the allegations. Even so, the episode generated media commentary and added another layer of scrutiny to the family. Joel also faced criticism involving administrative decisions at Lakewood Church, especially when the congregation moved to its now famous location, the former Compaq Center Arena in Houston. The church entered into a long-term agreement to use the facility for decades. Some media outlets highlighted the costs associated with renovating the arena, estimated at more than $90 million, much of which was reportedly raised through donations and internal campaigns. Although the initiative was seen as a milestone of expansion, some critics argued that the investment was excessive for a religious space, while others considered it a natural step for a large church with international broadcasts. Another controversial point concerns the fact that Joel Osteen has not received a salary from Lakewood Church since 2005. Although he has made it clear that his income comes exclusively from his books and speaking engagements, some question the transparency of the church's finances, with certain media estimates placing Lakewood's annual budget in the tens of millions of dollars. However, much of this information is based on external analyses rather than complete financial reports, since the church, like many religious organizations in the United States, is not legally required to publicly disclose detailed financial data. This fuels debates between critics who call for more transparency and supporters who argue that the institution follows all existing laws. In addition, Osteen's stance on widely debated social issues has also generated controversy over the years. Although he is known for avoiding confrontations and preferring messages of hope, that same posture has often been a target of criticism. In interviews, he avoided firm statements on sensitive topics such as civil rights, public policies, social equality, and identity issues. Therefore, for some, his approach is wise and unifying. For others, it is evasive. This intensified when he appeared on highly viewed programs where journalists and hosts sought more direct answers about what his church supports or does not support regarding contemporary issues. Another difficult moment that gained major attention occurred when a cache of envelopes containing donations was found behind a wall at Lakewood Church during a repair in 2021. The case drew attention because donations worth about $600,000 had been reported stolen years earlier. The discovery reignited conversations about internal security, administrative procedures, and how the church manages financial contributions. Police did not attribute responsibility to the pastor, and the case remained without definitive conclusions about what had actually happened. Even so, the incident sparked a wave of online questions, memes, and intense speculation, requiring formal statements from the church. Also noteworthy is the fact that, over the years, Osteen has faced criticism regarding paid admission events, especially on international tours. Although most Lakewood activities are free, some special events, conferences, and lectures required paid tickets, sometimes ranging from tens to hundreds of dollars depending on the location and seating. This generated debates about the thin line between ministry and motivational business. His representatives have always emphasized that these paid events were not church services, but special gatherings related to his books and his work as an author. Amid all these criticisms, Joel also experienced emotionally challenging personal moments. The death of his father, John Osteen, was one of the most difficult, especially because it happened just a few days after Joel had taken the pulpit for the first, and unexpected, time. This event placed enormous responsibility on his shoulders, and he has mentioned that he went through a period of doubt, insecurity, and fear of not being up to the role. Dealing with personal loss while needing to lead thousands of people was one of the most transformative points of his journey, marking his life with forced and early maturity. The financial, ideological, and administrative controversies ultimately shaped a complex public image. Joel Osteen's public perception has always been marked by intense contrasts, direct reflections of the duality surrounding his image. On one side, millions of admirers who see him as a charismatic and inspiring spiritual leader, and on the other, critics who question his preaching style, his stance toward controversies, and the way he manages the massive structure built around Lakewood Church. Whenever a controversy arises, whether related to his lifestyle, estimated wealth, accusations of theological superficiality, or episodes in which his church became the target of national criticism, the public response tends to split into two, almost opposing groups. For his supporters, Osteen is the victim of media attacks and distorted interpretations of his message of hope. For his detractors, he represents the height of the celebration of faith and the controversial blend of prosperity, power, and religion. Despite the controversies, Joel Osteen has a very characteristic posture in interviews, marked by serenity, calmness, and an emotional control that draws attention even from experienced interviewers. He rarely adopts an aggressive defensive stance or responds with irritation, preferring the path of conciliation, avoiding direct conflict, and consistently repeating that his focus is to inspire people, regardless of what is said about him. This style, while admired by many, also creates frustration among critics who expect clearer positions on delicate issues. Joel tends to circumvent more sensitive subjects, such as political debates, polarized social issues, or accusations of wealth accumulation, maintaining a gentle and optimistic communication approach, almost as if he were always inside his own spiritual comfort zone. On social media, however, public reaction is often even more intense, especially because Osteen's figure is associated with strong symbols like megachurches, wealth, business success, and motivational faith. Whenever a controversy escalates, his image circulates through memes, ironic comments, open criticism, and also emotional messages of support from followers who claim their lives have been transformed by his teachings. During interviews, though, Joel rarely mentions these online reactions directly, preferring to highlight the positive impact of his sermons. On multiple occasions, he has stated that he doesn't read comments and prefers to focus on what he believes to be his purpose, avoiding involvement in public debates that could generate even more friction. The episode that best illustrates this polarization was the controversy surrounding the delay in opening Lakewood Church as a shelter during Hurricane Harvey, a moment when criticism spread rapidly and Osteen's reputation was heavily attacked. In subsequent interviews, he remained calm, explained that the church was not operationally ready during the first days, and stated that his team was already working to provide assistance. For some, his posture sounded overly defensive. For others, it demonstrated exactly the type of serene leadership they expect from a pastor. This pattern repeated itself in other controversies, such as reports about his estimated wealth, criticism over the fact that he does not receive a salary from the church yet profits significantly from books and events, and comments about his luxurious residence. In all these situations, Joel avoids aggressive rebuttals or direct confrontations, emphasizing only that God has blessed him and that he aims to use his platform to help people, not to engage in public disputes. In televised interviews, especially on talk shows and high-audience programs, Osteen also makes his communication strategy very clear. He speaks in a calm voice, smiles often, keeps his answers brief, and always tries to redirect the conversation back to the message of hope he has repeated for decades. This creates a dual public perception. Admirers see him as an example of patience and spiritual self-control. Critics view the behavior as evasive, calculated, and not transparent in the face of legitimate questions. Even so, this posture is a fundamental part of his personal brand, and Osteen seems highly aware of that. He knows his public image is deeply connected to calmness, optimism, and positivity, and he maintains this pattern even under pressure. In a way, this way of reacting to controversies has become an important factor in his public longevity. By not fueling conflicts, he avoids prolonging scandals. By not taking political positions, he avoids alienating parts of his audience. By not responding with hostility, he reduces the negative impact of harsher criticism. And by consistently reinforcing his mission to encourage, not divide, he builds a continuous narrative that his followers embrace. This set of strategies, whether conscious or instinctive, allows the public reaction to controversies involving Joel Osteen to be intense, but never definitive, enabling him to navigate scandals, criticism, and debates while maintaining his support base and his cultural influence virtually intact. However, Joel Osteen's estimated fortune and the lifestyle he leads have always been among the most talked about and debated aspects of his public journey, often even more than his religious message itself. Although he does not usually disclose exact figures regarding his net worth, various media outlets, financial websites, and celebrity-focused publications estimate his personal fortune to be between $40 million and $60 million, and it may even surpass that amount depending on how the revenues from his books, television broadcasts, and speaking events are calculated. This number, though not officially confirmed, has become one of the main reasons he is frequently mentioned as one of the richest pastors in the United States. However, to understand this fortune, one must look at the path that built it, and that path, contrary to what many imagine, is not based on a church salary. Joel Osteen states that he has not received a salary from Lakewood Church since 2005, something his supporters always emphasize when discussing his financial independence. According to him, all his income comes from royalties, publishing contracts, book sales that became international bestsellers, and speaking engagements around the world. His most famous book, Your Best Life Now, sold millions of copies and generated millions in revenue, both from direct sales and from translations, re-releases, and adaptations into various formats. Other highly popular books reinforced this steady source of income. As an author, he became established not only in the religious world but also in the self-help and personal development sector, which expanded his reach and business opportunities even further. This editorial success opened the doors to a lifestyle that is often seen as incompatible with the role of a traditional religious leader, but at the same time reflects the modern model of pastors who have become media personalities. One of the most frequently cited elements when discussing Joel Osteen's luxurious life is his main residence, located in River Oaks, one of the most expensive and exclusive areas of Houston, Texas. The house, widely publicized by the media, is estimated at $10.5 million and has around 17,000 square feet. Includes numerous bedrooms, multiple living areas, sophisticated finishes, large gardens, modern architectural design, and reinforced security. Although many religious leaders live more discreetly, the visual impact of this mansion sparked intense debates about how far a pastor can, or should, go in enjoying such an elevated lifestyle. In addition to the main residence, the Osteen family has also been associated with other properties, including a previous home valued at around $2 million, which they lived in before moving to the River Oaks mansion. Some reports mention that the family maintains real estate investments and owns high-end cars, although Joel rarely gives details about this in interviews, preferring to maintain as much privacy as possible regarding his domestic life. Another frequently mentioned point is the fact that the clothes Joel wears during public appearances are always well-tailored, modern, and consistent with his clean and discreet aesthetic. He rarely dresses in an extravagant way, but his preference for an elegant, polished look is clear, similar to high-visibility presenters, authors, and speakers. This contributes to his carefully crafted image, and many analysts believe that this presentation reinforces his brand of positive motivation, emotional comfort, and a gentle approach. Luxury also appears in the events organized by Lakewood Church, such as conferences, special gatherings, and public presentations. Although regular services are free, some events, especially those held outside the church or during tours, included paid tickets, with prices varying depending on location and production resources. These events were comparable to major personal development seminars, with elaborate sets, professional lighting, and high-quality production. While critics questioned whether such events strayed from religious purposes, supporters argued that Osteen combined spirituality with inspiration, and that this structure helped reach larger and more diverse audiences. Another aspect fueling discussions about Osteen's wealth is the Lakewood Church TV broadcasts. His programs reach millions of people weekly, and although the church does not sell traditional commercial spots during broadcasts, it does receive spontaneous donations and voluntary contributions that help sustain the ministry. TV visibility and digital platforms reinforce his image, generate more book sales, and further expand his global reach. Even though these donations go to the church and not directly to Osteen's personal assets, the indirect financial impact on strengthening the Joel Osteen brand is undeniable. For this reason, many analysts consider that part of his fortune results from this well-structured media ecosystem. One of the most common criticisms is that, even without receiving a church salary, Osteen lives a lifestyle made possible only because of his influence as the leader of one of the largest congregations in the world. Critics argue that his public image brings economic benefits that would not exist without the church, while supporters point out that many authors, speakers, and communicators possess similar fortunes without any religious connection. This comparison has become common because Osteen, unlike most pastors, positions himself as a motivational communicator as well, placing him in a hybrid category between spiritual leader, influencer, writer, and speaker. Despite the controversies, one thing is certain. Joel always maintains a calm attitude when questioned about his lifestyle. In interviews, he states that he sees no problem in prospering financially and has never felt guilty for living comfortably. He says he believes that God blesses people in different ways and that prosperity is not negative as long as it is used responsibly. His message, often associated with prosperity, is interpreted by him as a way to help people find hope, motivation, and emotional strength to overcome challenges. Even so, his luxurious lifestyle remains one of the most polarizing aspects of his public image. For some, it represents the height of contradiction between wealth and religious life. For others, it is simply the reflection of a successful career built through books, speaking engagements, and broadcasts. The fact is that this combination of religious influence, media presence, and personal prosperity has shaped a unique image in the modern Christian world, making Joel Osteen one of the most discussed, both positively and negatively, pastors of the 21st century. The cultural impact and spiritual legacy of Joel Osteen go far beyond the walls of Lakewood Church, extending into the media, popular culture, and the way many contemporary Christians have come to view faith, prosperity, and spirituality in the 21st century. This has created a unique phenomenon that elevates his influence beyond the traditional religious sphere and places him at the center of debates on hope, motivation, wealth, and spiritual authenticity. Since taking the pulpit, Osteen has not only expanded the church in impressive numbers, but has also redefined the language of preaching, replacing harsh and punitive narratives with messages of encouragement, self-esteem, and positivity. As a result, millions of people around the world see him as a kind of global pastor whose voice reaches homes, businesses, military services, and even prisons. This communicative style, combining simplicity, optimism, light humor, and a focus on human emotions, became his signature, shaping how many modern ministries present themselves. It emphasized a welcoming atmosphere, accessible language, and the idea that faith can be a source of mental and emotional well-being, something that previously received far less emphasis in traditional contexts. Furthermore, Osteen played a fundamental role in popularizing the so-called message of hope, which is often associated with the prosperity gospel, even though he avoids that label. Still, his message that God desires people to live with fullness, gratitude, and a positive outlook ended up influencing not only churches but also motivational programs, corporate lectures, and personal development content around the world. In cultural terms, Osteen's legacy is also evident through his consistent presence on television, radio, digital platforms, and live streams, reaching audiences that might never step into a conventional church. This means he helped bring spiritual messages into secular environments without losing their emotional impact. His books, which became international bestsellers, cemented this influence even further, being read not only by devoted Christians, but also by people seeking motivation, emotional balance, or new perspectives during personal crises. In many ways, Joel has become part of pop culture, frequently mentioned in TV shows, parodies, talk shows, and public debates, sometimes as a source of inspiration, sometimes as a target of criticism due to his optimistic stance on complex issues. Regardless of whether people agree with his ideas or not, millions know who he is, which demonstrates the strength of his presence as a cultural symbol. His spiritual legacy, however, is the deepest part of his influence. Joel Osteen helped reshape how many Christians view the relationship between faith and emotions, emphasizing that spirituality does not need to be marked solely by sacrifice, suffering, or guilt. It can also be a space for inner healing, self-worth, appreciation for small victories, and the pursuit of wholeness. For many followers, he has become a source of comfort in difficult times, offering an interpretation of faith centered on personal overcoming and the capacity to rise again after setbacks. At the same time, his approach has sparked debates about spiritual superficiality, lack of theological depth, and excessive focus on emotional well-being, which, interestingly, also forms part of his legacy, since it encouraged broader discussions about the role of the church in the contemporary world. Another remarkable aspect is the direct impact he had on the structure of Lakewood Church, now considered the largest megachurch in the United States, with an operation that functions almost like a multifunctional institution, bringing together events, international broadcasts, social services, and community projects. This church model influenced other religious communities to rethink communication strategies, organizational structures, and global outreach. In addition, the consistency of his message over decades reinforces the idea that his presence has left a lasting mark, whether one agrees with his beliefs or not. Joel Osteen transformed the way evangelical faith is promoted, consumed, and perceived. Joel Osteen's personal life is often described as peaceful, disciplined, and shaped by a routine that blends spirituality and family in a very natural way, almost as an extension of the work he does at the church. He married Victoria Osteen in 1987 after meeting her in a jewelry store where she worked. From the beginning, the two built a very solid partnership, both in their relationship and in ministry. Victoria has always been seen as a charismatic and communicative figure, and that energy perfectly complemented Joel's calmer and more introspective style. Over time, she not only became co-pastor of Lakewood Church, but also emerged as a very important presence on stage, in broadcasts, and in the public representation of the church. Together, they had 2 children, Jonathan and Alexandra. Both grew up exposed from an early age to the church environment, accompanying events, travels, services, and everything involved in one of the largest congregations in the United States. Despite the family's visibility, Joel and Victoria have always tried to keep their children away from controversies and public pressure, encouraging a relatively normal life. Jonathan, the oldest, pursued a musical career and occasionally participates in services, while Alexandra also has musical talent and has sung at church events. Even so, both maintain a discreet public presence, avoiding the celebrity family image, something Joel and Victoria have always sought to prevent. At home, Joel is known for maintaining a very structured routine. He wakes up early, exercises daily, reads, writes, and prepares his sermons in advance. He has mentioned in interviews that he tries to live a simple and balanced life despite the enormous responsibilities of the church. However, not everything has been easy over the years. The couple has faced moments of public pressure, intense criticism, and questions about their lifestyle and the way they manage the church. Victoria, for example, was involved in a civil lawsuit after a disagreement on a flight, an episode that gained national attention and placed the family in an uncomfortable spotlight. Although both handled the situation with composure, the case served as a reminder that their public image also makes them constant targets of interpretations and judgments. Even in the face of controversies, Joel has always emphasized that his emotional foundation lies in his family. He frequently mentions in interviews that, despite Lakewood's size, his priority is maintaining a healthy, stable home environment filled with dialogue. He also shares that he avoids bringing home any tense discussions from the church, reserving that space for rest, light conversations, and quality time with Victoria and the children. Over the years, the couple has learned to manage life under public scrutiny in a balanced way, choosing not to expose intimate details and keeping the focus on projecting an image of unity and positivity. In essence, the Osteen family dynamic remains closely connected to the values the church itself promotes: encouragement, faith, perseverance, and emotional closeness. For Joel, his family is not only a source of support, but also an essential part of the structure that has allowed him to continue growing as a spiritual leader and public figure, even amid the pressures and expectations that have always accompanied his journey. Today, Joel Osteen is living a phase marked by stability, renewed focus, and a constant effort to balance his public image with his personal and ministerial priorities. Even after decades in the spotlight, his reputation remains split between deep admiration and persistent criticism, something he has learned to handle naturally. Although certain controversies are still remembered, such as debates about his wealth, his luxurious lifestyle, his posture during public crises, and the motivational tone of his theology, the truth is that he has managed to preserve an extremely solid core of followers who see him as a figure of hope, lightness, and spiritual encouragement in an increasingly heavy and anxious world. Osteen remains one of the most influential pastors in the United States, with weekly broadcasts that reach millions of viewers and a consistent presence on digital platforms, where his messages, short, simple, and emotionally direct, still have enormous reach. On a personal level, Joel shows a growing desire to protect his family's privacy and maintain a more balanced routine. Little by little, he has reduced his participation in external in-person events and has dedicated more attention to the internal environment of Lakewood Church and to the production of carefully planned content, whether in books, sermons, conferences, or selected interviews. He understands that his image is his greatest tool, and for that reason, he maintains the serene demeanor, the always optimistic expression, and the gentle communication style that have made him a spiritual icon for so many people. Still, it is noticeable that today he moves with more caution, aware that every statement can go viral, spark heated debates, and impact public perception of his work. In terms of priorities, Osteen seems focused on three major pillars: the continued strengthening of Lakewood Church, the expansion of his message to new audiences, and the preservation of his legacy. At the church, he maintains the rhythm of large events, packed services, and global broadcasts, but he also shows interest in reinforcing social programs and community support initiatives, an indirect response to criticisms that have emerged over the years regarding the institution's role during difficult times. In the digital ecosystem, Joel has increasingly invested in online platforms, understanding that younger audiences consume spirituality differently and value content that is short, direct, and emotionally comforting. In the publishing world, he continues to release books that quickly become bestsellers, reinforcing his brand and expanding his cultural influence. As for the future, Osteen seems aware that his journey is entering a phase of gradual transition. There are no signs of immediate retirement, but there is a subtle movement toward a family continuation of the ministry, especially with the more frequent involvement of his children and close collaborators in internal church roles. This suggests that he is preparing the groundwork so that Lakewood and his message remain strong even when he decides to slow down. At the same time, he maintains an optimistic tone about what is ahead, stating that he believes God still has much to do through his life and his community, a phrase he often repeats whenever asked about his long-term plans.